It's time for me to wrap up my preview series of the AFC by taking a look at what 2012 may have in store for the AFC East. The Miami Dolphins in 2011 finished 6-10 and in last place in the AFC East. When you look at the team and why they finished the way they did last year, first and foremost, to start off with the fact that they started off the season 0-7. You know, it's a credit to that team that they didn't quit, that the rest of the year they went 6-3. But when you start off the season 0-7, you know, basically your year is done. Make no mistake about it. On the defensive side of the ball, they were solid but not spectacular. They were pretty good against the run, shaky at times against the pass, but a pretty good team, 6th overall in the league in terms of points allowed on defense. So even if they allowed some yards through the air, they were able to minimize the damage on the scoreboard. On the offensive side of the ball, they had a solid running game, but it was the passing game that was their big bugaboo. Their inability to effectively and consistently move the ball down the football field through the air, whether that be Chad Henne at quarterback or even Matt Moore. And while he played better than Henne, I don't think he was a world beater by any stretch of the imagination. So it was no surprise that Tony Sparano was let go, and in comes former Green Bay Packers offensive coordinator Joe Philbin to try and bring an offensive resurgence to South Beach. It also isn't a surprise that an organization that, in my opinion, has been starving for a young franchise quarterback since Dan Marino left over a decade ago, went the quarterback route in the first round of the draft this year with the new head coach, taking Ryan Tannehill from Texas A&M 8th overall. Anybody that watched my draft preview videos back in April knows that I'm a huge fan of Tannehill, and I believe within 5 years he will establish himself as the best quarterback out of this 2012 draft class, even better than Luck and even better than RG3 or Brandon Weeden even. I think he has the best combination of tools. He's going to be playing under his old college coach, Mike Sherman, who's the offensive coordinator there. Joe Philbin's a very good offensive guy. They did other things with their offense. Now, trading Brandon Marshall to my Bears for 2 third-round picks is a move that leaves a lot of people scratching their heads, and I understand that, but maybe it was just a thing of they got tired of dealing with Brandon Marshall's crap because he was a headache. He had a lot of off-the-field problems. So maybe they felt with a new quarterback, a new coaching regime, that they needed a clean slate. On the defensive side of the ball, you know, this is a unit, again, that's probably going to be solid, not spectacular, give up some yards through the air, but they'll be able to be a top 10 defense in terms of points allowed, minimizing the damage, which is going to be important with a rookie quarterback. Ryan Tannehill was the right guy to have starting for the Miami Dolphins. You drafted this guy 8th overall. You need him to become your franchise quarterback desperately in South Beach. Him sitting on the bench behind a guy like a Matt Moore wasn't going to get the job done. Tannehill needs to play from week 1, and I'm glad to see that Joe Philbin and Mike Sherman made the right decision and went with Tannehill as their guy in week 1. And that ultimately is going to be of what determines the success of and failure of the Dolphins in 2012. It's not just about wins and losses. I think if the Dolphins finish around 6-10 again, you know, and even if they're in last place in the AFC East, but you see flashes of brilliance from Tannehill, or you see flashes where you can see that this guy is going to be a legit franchise quarterback for the Miami Dolphins for many years to come, you could sit there and take that 6-10 record and say, you know what, that's okay, because that's the starting point and we're only going up from here. They're going to need to surround him with more offensive weapons over the next few years, but at least offensive line-wise, with guys like Jake Long and Jonathan Martin as the bookend tackles, you've at least got an offensive line that you would think, in theory, would be able to keep Tannehill upright and give him time to go through his progressions and make the right decisions. Hopefully for the Dolphins organization, Tannehill has a good year. I think he'll have an up-and-down year, but he'll show you enough to where he will establish that he is going to be the man in South Beach for a long time. But the Dolphins will still finish somewhere around 6-10 and in last place in the AFC East, but probably have a better feeling about themselves after 2012 than they did after last season. Oh boy, where do you even begin with the New York Jets? Seriously. In 2011, some people may feel, even though they finished 8-8 and were second place in the division, that they were perhaps the most dysfunctional locker room and team as a whole in all of the NFL. And there's something to be said about that. And I think sometimes that's kind of the problem with Rex Ryan. When things are going good, he has that combustible personality that can get a lot more out of people. But when things aren't going so well, he has a tendency maybe to rub people the wrong way, and it can create a hazardous, if not poisonous, environment in that Jets locker room. Part of the reason for the struggles of the Jets in 2011, of course, focus and center around the offense. Sean Green had a 1,000-yard season, but I don't think anybody would view him as a dominant starting running back. He had some good games, and he had some games that was like, eh. On the offensive side of the ball, Mark Sanchez was frustrating yet again for Jets fans and for head coach Rex Ryan. He threw 26 touchdown passes, but threw 7 picks in the last 3 games of the season. That's not going to get it done for anybody, anywhere, anytime. So heading off season, with all the questions surrounding the team, the New York Jets decided in all their wisdom that we're going to create an even bigger media circus than we already are and go trade for Timothy Tebow. Now imagine if you're Mark Sanchez sitting there saying to yourself, I believe I'm the starter, and even though I've struggled at times, I still think this is my team. But they bring in this guy, who's one of the worst passers that the league has seen in many, many years, and they're viewing him as legit competition to me? What a way to kill Mark Sanchez's confidence. I'll shift gears for a second. The defensive side of the ball, the Jets' defense wasn't as dominant as you would expect from a Rex Ryan coached unit as they had shown over the past few years. They showed some signs of, falling apart. They didn't allow a ton of points, mind you, and they were shaky against the run and still pretty good against the pass. But it was just like at times the Jets, when they needed to make that big stop, couldn't. Sometimes stats don't tell the whole story. Going into the offseason, obviously they brought in Tim Tebow. They drafted Stephen Hill from Georgia Tech to try and, I guess, inject some life into the offense, get some playmakers in the offense. As much as the Jets and Rex Ryan are going to sit there and spin it and say, we're going to put Tim Tebow in some specialty packages, blah, blah, blah. This is going to be a distraction and a black cloud that hangs over this organization all year long, especially if the Jets struggle out of the gate. Now you've got Tebow mania in the biggest media market in the country. This could spell potential disaster for that organization and especially for that locker room. This Tim Tebow move alone could either be the one that helps galvanize this team. They, rally behind him if he takes over for Sanchez. And they're the team that says, fuck everyone, fuck the haters, we're going to make a run of this, and goes like 10-6, 11-5, and makes the Super Bowl. Teams like this do that. Or everything could implode, they blow up, and they win 6 or 7 games. I look at the Jets, and I see a very troubled team. I would not be surprised to see this team finish 3rd in the AFC East and only win 7, maybe 8 ball games. Their defense still has talent to be a dominant defense, but sometimes it's not all about talent. It's about chemistry and the way guys play together and the focus that they have. And at times, again, that seemed to be a little bit lacking from the Jets. But they're going to need that out of the defense because with the combination of Sanchez and Tebow at quarterback, whoever it is, I wouldn't count on a lot of big plays and a lot of high-scoring outputs from that Jets offense in 2012. It was really a tale of 2 halves of a season for the Buffalo Bills in 2011. Early on, they were one of the great stories of the NFL. They seem to be that team that you'll see like once a year that has that lucky horseshoe shoved straight up their arse, if you will, and we're finding ways to win games. They were coming back from 20-plus points down against the Oakland Raiders and the New England Patriots in Week 3. And they came off of their bye week, beat the Washington Redskins in Week 8, and were 5-2 at that point in time in the season. And it looked like the Bills were finally going to end their long-ass playoff drought, that I think extends all the way back to 1999, if I'm not mistaken. It really looked like last year they were going to do that. Then they proceeded to lose 7 games in a row in 8 out of their last 9. Ouch. A rough, rough way to finish the season. When you look at them offensively, they were able to score points last year. They were able to move the ball both on the ground and through the air. So the offense, while not perfect and not the most talented in the league, was far from being the problem. Yet again for the Bills, it seemed to be that defense was their problem. They couldn't generate a consistent pass rush on anybody. They couldn't stop anybody on the ground. They couldn't stop anybody through the air. And they couldn't stop teams from getting in the damn end zone. They gave up a shit ton of points. So it shouldn't be any surprise going into the offseason that the Buffalo Bills' primary focus was going to be on the defensive side of the ball. They gave $100 million to Mario Williams and brought in Mark Anderson. They wanted these two guys to come in and be the bookends at defensive end that could generate some pass rush, some real pass rush from that position, and start to make the Buffalo Bills defense a more respectable unit, if nothing else, to step up to the level of what the offense brings to that Bills team. Now, even though they brought in Williams, who didn't play much last year, let's face it, and Anderson, who, when he was in Chicago was best as a situational guy, and when he was in New England, he was better in that 3-4. They're asking a lot. They've paid a lot of money to these two guys that there are questions about. And they drafted Stephen Gilmore in the first round from South Carolina, a guy I was okay on, but I didn't think he was a world beater as a corner. But they have tried to address some of their defensive deficiencies. And I would expect defensively that they will improve some in 2012. Not a ton, but maybe they don't have to improve a ton. Buffalo doesn't have to be have a dominant defense in order to be a playoff contender in the AFC, because they do have an offense with Ryan Fitzpatrick and guys like Stevie Johnson and guys like Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller in the backfield that can move the ball consistently on people and score some points. When I look at teams that I think could surprise this year, I look at the Buffalo Bills and I say, this was a team that was 5-2 at one point in time, and then they lost 7 in a row. If they just win a couple of those games, they were still a potential playoff team in the AFC last year. And I think they will rectify some of their wrongs from last year. I predict that the Buffalo Bills will finish somewhere around 10-6, second place in the AFC East, and bang it out and possibly get one of the 2 wildcard spots in that AFC. You want to know why, for the second time in 5 seasons, the New England Patriots had a phenomenal regular season, only to fall short and lose to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl? It's about matchups. On offense, the Giants could stretch out the Patriots' questionable secondary with 3 wide receivers that were all playmakers. Defensively, they could generate a lot of pass rush with their front 4. They didn't have to blitz a ton. And the Patriots' offensive line just wasn't athletic enough and talented enough to be able to contain the Giants' front 4. And the Giants as a team in general are just more physical at the point of attack, both on offense and defense. And in recent years, what's been troubling to me about the Patriots is they've kind of gone away from the winning formula that brought them 3 Super Bowls in the previous decade. They've become much more of a finesse team on offense and defense. Is it any surprise that they haven't won a Super Bowl since the 2004 season, even though they still have Brady and a lot of weapons on offense and still some talent on defense? It's because I think the New England Patriots lost their way. They went into this offseason trying to address the defense, addressing the front 7. They've spent so many high picks on secondary players and haven't gotten the results. They still get shredded in the passing game. They finally realized we got to get better in the front 7. Games are won and lost in the trenches. We need to generate a better pass rush. We need to be more physical. So they drafted Chandler Jones from Syracuse and Dante Hightower with their 2 first-round picks to do just that. That's a good place to start. Offensively, Brady, just like last year when he threw for over 5,200 yards, he's going to have another phenomenal season, I'm sure. He's got weapons all over the place, guys like Wes Welker and new addition Brandon Lloyd on the outside at wide receiver. He's got the best 1-2 punch in terms of tight ends and Gronkowski and Hernandez. But when you look at him, you have to be able to run the ball at times. And Ben Jarvis Green Ellis is gone. But in recent years, they've been so much of a running back by committee team. And they're going to do it again this year with guys like Woodhead and Shane Vereen and Stephen Ridley, that they really lack that one bell cow running back. And it affects their ability to establish a physical identity on offense, control the point of attack, and win playoff games against teams like the Giants in the 4th quarter by running the ball. When you go with the finesse game, it can win games for you, but there's also times where it can bite you in the ass. You have to be more balanced, and you have to be able to keep defenses honest. And the Patriots at times struggle to do that. So looking ahead to 2012, I think the Patriots will just end up being a repeat of what they've been in years past. A great regular season team that will run up against a team, whether it be the Ravens or the San Francisco 49ers or the New York Giants, somebody that presents a bad matchup for them, and they won't be able to match up, and they'll get knocked out of the playoffs, and their fans will be disappointed and scratching their heads and wondering why. Well, look at what your organization's done in recent years. The Patriots, and especially Bill Belichick, have become kind of soft and have lost their way. And until they rediscover that, they'll just continue to disappoint with great regular seasons and disappointing playoff finishes. Let me know what you expect from the AFC East in 2012. I'm the Schleg Daddy on this channel all year long through the NFL season. Every week I'm going to bring you prediction videos in terms of my picks for each week based off of the spread. I'll also give you fantasy football sit and start videos every week. So if you need help deciding who to put in the lineup and who to take out, hopefully you can turn to me and I'll help you out. Thanks, everyone.